Well, you mentioned misinformation, disinformation, how the left prefer the argument not to be discussed, just to let people, go on feelings and emotions. I was in a cafe yesterday and there are a couple of women next to us talking about The Voice and, quote, or paraphrasing, one of them said, no, I don't want to know anything. I'm just going to vote yes, don't, and it's better if nobody asks anything.
Wow.
Well, I'm sorry. Is that the Australian mentality now? We don't ask questions. We don't want to know what's going on. We just go, oh, yeah, I've been told, I'm sheep, so I've been told to vote yes, so I will. Let's talk about The Voice. While you've been away, lots happened. James, how was your trip, by the way?
Oh, the trip was fantastic.
You were in New York?
I was in New York City. I was in Boston.
You saw the wonderful Miranda Devine?
Saw the wonderful Miranda Devine, who sends her regards to outsiders across Australia.
As she does?
Yes.
Fantastic.
Yep.
So The Voice has kind of been kicking along. Have a listen to Linda Burney. This is someone trying to ask Linda Burney questions about the cost, for example, of The Voice. And as usual, Labor do not want to give you any answers to anything. Have a listen.
Minister Linda Burney came to Albany and Rebecca Stevens hosted her for an invitation-only event to discuss The Voice. The really big push tonight was that we have to do this, we have to do this. There was a lot of emotional blackmail. She says they have never recognised First Nation people and they need to be recognised in the big book of law. I wanted details. Earlier in the minister's presentation, she said people are getting bogged down in details. Basically, don't worry about the details, just vote yes. She told me that I was wrong on the figures, and I came back at her in front of the whole audience and said, no, I'm not.
So that was a member of the audience listening to Linda Burney explaining how there are just not enough answers, James.
Well, yeah, and there are not enough answers, and they keep denying that, any sort of, responsibility for what actually the thing's going to look like, what the model's going to be. Say, oh, read the Calma Langton report, but they haven't committed to that. We don't know what it's going to look like. We don't know where the thing's going to actually live physically. We don't know what it's going to...
Let me guess, Canberra?
Yeah, Canberra. No, I know that. But, beyond that. But, we also see across the country things, that have gone further ahead than The Voice, and we see where this is landing. And we see in WA where there's new legislation and property owners are now terrified. We spoke about this before I left a month ago about the impact of this legislation.
Cultural heritage bill.
And now there are people who are saying, oh, well, my land is now worthless after these sudden assessments, which are done on the basis of who knows what.
Yeah.
And it's really, really troublesome. And I think, you're going to see WA and Queensland surely voting against The Voice.
Absolutely.
Only one more state needs to vote no. Very likely that's going to be South Australia and/or Tasmania. And the thing is over.
Well, I think they're all going to vote no. I just want to play you this clip, which was in... We had Jack Callion, you'll remember, a couple of weeks ago on the show. Terrific bloke. And he was saying how all The Voice is doing is setting Indigenous people against each other, this family or this clan against that clan. Because the whole structure that we've got in Australia, certain clans, certain tribes get favoured, others don't. They pit them against each other. We saw this with this opening of a motorway last week in WA, and they were arguing about who should open it. I think we got the grab.
But I don't need these people coming out here thinking that you fellas could say this, say that on this land.
It was an uncomfortable moment for the minister, caught up in a turf war among First Nations people.
I don't need permission of you or anybody else. Neither do I. This is my country too.
A traditional smoking ceremony going up in smoke after competing Aboriginal groups fired up at each other.
I thought you fellas was from Morrow. Well, you thought wrong. No.
So, Liz, we saw there exactly what Jack Callion had warned about on this show a few weeks earlier. You bring in these sorts of laws, you're setting up favouritism, you're pitting one. There will always be winners and there will always be losers. So every white or non-Indigenous Australian out there who thinks you are doing the right thing by voting yes, what you are actually doing is you are disenfranchising the poorest and the most vulnerable Indigenous Australians. And that's on you. You've got the opportunity to stop this, but no, I don't want to know anything. I'm just going to vote yes. No. What you are doing is disadvantaging the most disadvantaged Australians, and shame on you. Liz, what did you make of that?
Oh, well, it was actually, sadly, a little bit humorous because here we have these politicians opening a freeway, they're doing their smoking ceremony, they're checking the box, and here we've got two different Indigenous people going, hang on a minute, this is my job. No, you're on my turf. This is my job.
Welcome to The Voice.
Speaking of disenfranchising Indigenous people, the article that came out today, well, this week I should say, about someone having to pay up to 20 grand just to build on his own property, that man is Indigenous. And he's just trying to build on his own land. And now, thanks to these heritage cultural laws, it's like, well, pay the bill, buddy. So even they aren't exempt from this bureaucratic nightmare that's been created in order to supposedly honour them and tiptoe around any cultural sensitivities. It makes absolutely no sense, and we can expect a lot more of that on steroids were The Voice to get up.
Now, I was pleased to get a letter from one of our regular viewers, Boyd, who told me that he was at the Rugby League State of Origin, and his opinion was that there's kind of been, James, people are getting a bit fed up with the welcome to country stuff. There's a more muted reaction. They've dropped the kind of our land always was, always will be stuff. There was no voice propaganda. Do you think maybe the public, maybe the corporations and sports bodies might be waking up to the fact that maybe not everybody's on board with the Yes campaign, folks?
Well, it comes back to something very interesting that lady was talking about in the clip that we spoke about before. She said moral blackmail, and that is ultimately what this comes down to. And so far, the entire message of this Voice campaign, whatever sort of specifics about this and that you're talking about, the overarching message is, an illegitimacy of Australia, an illegitimacy of the Australian government, and anybody who thinks otherwise is not really a great person. So you can either be a good person, agree with us, and join the elect, or, you can wallow in your racist bogan misery, which is essentially the implication that they're making. And I saw a fascinating story yesterday where now they're saying, oh, well, we're now going to try and go for young tradies who are, politically disengaged. And they're trying to find some group that they can come and do it. But I've also spoken to people who've been at sporting events and said that the Voice messaging is falling very flat in the crowds. People don't like it because they're being told you're bad, your government's bad, and you have to vote yes to absolve a guilt for something that you never did.
And this is why it was so important that Peter Dutton and the Coalition came out against The Voice. You have given the quiet Australians, the forgotten Australians, the real Australians out there, you've given them the moral authority to say, no, we knew this thing was wrong and we're not going to be voting for it.